today, this morning, our module will be talking about scroll views. We'll actually use the project, the starter project we have. Right now, it has two view controllers. It has a project's view controller, and it has a project's detail controller. So we'll be using the detail controller. The detail controller will be a scroll view. That scroll view will have the first name of the fellow, the last name. It will have the project image, if there's one available, and it will have a description, right? So all the elements we have right now, there's a potential where the description is a bit longer, right? Which is probably the correct way you want to go there. Because some descriptions I found out was basically three words description, right? Like to do app, for example. That's not enough, right? Your README should be talking about your project, so really put a description in there. If you want to see what that looks like, you could take a look at Cameron's README, right? So he has at least 2 paragraphs talking about what his project is. So a description like that will be longer, right? So yes, we could use a UI text view for it, but a more ideal UI would be to have everything in a scroll view. So as that description gets longer, the actual view gets longer, and the user is able to scroll to see the view's content. Everybody with me? Any questions so far? And again, anything that scrolls inherits from a UIScrollView, right? Our collection views, our table views, our text views, it scrolls, it inherits from UIScrollView. Along the way, we'll also take a look at what Swift Package Manager looks like. So Swift Package Manager, basically, if you're depending on, for example, in our project right now, we do not have a network helper, right? So in the past, we've said, okay, I need a network helper, I need a UI image extension, whatever I need to go to find some project that has this and add it to my project. Everybody, right? That's what we've been doing. So Swift Package Manager is a dependency manager. If you have a dependency that you need, for example, a network helper, whatever that is there, you could use Swift Package Manager, go to GitHub where that particular dependency is, and use Swift Package Manager to add that dependency to your project. So all what you need is that URL where that network helper is, and add it to your project. Okay, so we'll take a look at what that looks like. That's the first thing we'll do. Then we'll do the scroll view, and if time permits, we'll see what SFSafariViewController looks like. That's where some of the demos we've seen, you click on a button, it takes you outside of your app, it takes you, well, it looks like it's outside the app, but it takes you to SafariViewController. So we'll take a look at what that looks like, where we click on a button, and it takes us, if you see that button here, that GitHub button, you click on that button, it will take you to the GitHub page to see more details of that particular project. So in our scroll view, we'll have first name, last name, project image, description. One of the most important parts of making a scroll view work is the content view. So first, we'll add a scroll view to our scene. Right, those are some of the elements here. So first, we'll add a scroll view to our scene on our view controller. Our view controller does not have anything right now. First thing we add is a scroll view, okay? That's not enough. On that scroll view, we'll add a view, a UI view onto that scroll view. That view will be considered to be the content view of the scroll view. A scroll view only knows about its height in that particular example based on the contents of the content view. Based on the contents of the view, it knows the height. It knows if it needs to scroll at a particular distance. Okay? So it needs to know the content size of itself, of its contents, in order for it to scroll. So first we'll have a scroll view. On top of the scroll view, we'll have a view, which we'll call content view. And all the elements will be added. All these elements we have here, first name label, last name label, will be added to the content view. Okay? And again, this is a scrollable vertical view. Most importantly, again, here is the height. Everything needs to have a height relative to the content view. If it does not have a height, the scroll view won't work. So for example, first name needs to be constrained to the top of the content view. last name needs to have a height, our label needs to have a height in order for the content view at the end of the day makes its calculation. It's like, okay, the content view is 1,000 pixels high, right? If there's not enough information for it to know it's 1,000 pixels high, it will not scroll. Some of your content will get chopped off, okay? So the two parts here that's important is our first name needs to be tied up with the content view, and the description needs to be bottom aligned with the content view. And everything in between needs to be vertically aligned to its neighbor in order for the entire scroll view to work, okay? Scroll views are a bit hard to get set up, like really and truly. The one thing that you miss, your scroll view won't work as expected, okay? All right. Any questions so far before we continue? Everything needs to have a height. The description will be the last thing. It won't have, we won't give it a specific height. The height will come from the content based on how many lines it has of content. It's going to grow that scroll view, okay? But everything minus the description will have an explicit height that we give it. But the description label will be set to 0 lines, okay? So that's where we headed. Let's go ahead and see what the project looks like. So here's our project. It's called Holiday Projects. Right now, if we were to build the project, we have some errors. So if we take a look at the errors here, for example, we see we do not have a network helper. So there's no network helper here. So how do we get a network helper? Again, in the past, we've been going to our project, get a network helper, drag it in. Am I on board here with everybody? Right? Okay, so we'll take a look at Swift Package Manager and see how Swift Package Manager can allow us to add a dependency to our project. Swift Package Manager is about 3 years old or so, but as of last year, it got really more mature in Xcode, right? Other dependency packages that you've heard of or seen or probably used is CocoaPods. CocoaPods is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, dependency manager. It's been around for a long time, right? It's been around for a long time, obviously, so there'll be more support, more people have packages there, more people have third-party libraries there, so that's the biggest dependency manager. Our next dependency manager is Carthage, okay? But as Swift developers, as Apple developers, anything that's native, you want to be able to use comfortably. You want to go to first, right? With CocoaPods, we'll take a look at what CocoaPods looks like when we start doing Firebase, right? Either way, we'll take a look at what CocoaPods looks like. But CocoaPods takes you away from Xcode. You have to go to terminal. You have to do some configuration there. There's some setup there involved, okay? With Swift Package Manager, again, as of last year, the thing is so streamlined. It's so easy to add a dependency into your project and remove it that we should, as iOS developers, know how to use it. Okay? All right. So I'll navigate over to my GitHub page. I'll select this out. Everybody just go ahead and navigate over to my GitHub page. The Swift Package Manager, it cannot just be any repo. It has to be a package itself. I can't go to just any repo because there's a network helper. It's not going to work. It needs to be a package. Everybody with me? Okay. Great. So everybody's on my page, correct? Yes? Okay. So at this point, some of the packages, I guess that's my our demo here of my holiday project. But over the holidays, I created 3 Swift packages because that's like one of the things I wanted to be working on. I wanted, since I started Pursuit, to work on some package. That way, once we're comfortable with Network Helper, we just say import Network Helper, and it works. Okay? That's when you're comfortable with Network Helper, right? You're comfortable with your RSS session, you know how it works. You're tired of like dragging some folder in. At this point, you could say import Network Helper. Okay? So I created over the break 3 packages. One has to deal with images. It could cache images and all that stuff. The next one is the Network Helper package. And the third one is data persistence. So when we're comfortable with data persistence, we could use that data persistence package and simply say import data persistence and go ahead and save your objects as you need to. Okay? But the one we're after right now is ImageKit. So if we click on ImageKit, ImageKit has two dependencies. It has a network helper and it has a data persistence. Okay? So for now, what we need to do is just copy the URL, copy the GitHub URL. Simply copy the GitHub URL. Copy the GitHub URL, navigate back to Xcode, and navigate back to Xcode. Go to File in Xcode, go to File. Do we all see where it says Swift Packages? Do we see Swift Packages? Chelsea, you see Swift Packages? Come closer so you could see, please. Okay, so we see Swift Packages. Do we see Add Package Dependency? So click on Add Package Dependency. And now there's a space for us to put in a URL. So you could search or you could enter a package repository URL. Okay? Who's asking that question? Somebody's asking a question. Okay, so we all have access to the dialog that says choose package directory, correct? Before I continue, go ahead and paste in the URL you just copied in. The URL should be ImageKit, yes? Okay, at this point, click on Next. Xcode gives you a dialog. Couple places you could get a repository or a package dependency is from a version number. My particular package works with version numbers, so that's the default, that's the recommended one you use. You could also get it from a branch. We'll talk about branching in Unit 4. You could also get it from a particular commit, okay? But for now, we're getting it from the default version number. I'll go ahead and click Next, or go ahead and click Next, everybody. And go ahead and click Finish. Okay? At this point, Command B, and there should be no more errors, correct? Anybody still have errors? You imported it, you Command B, no more errors, okay? Where are those packages? Those packages are right here at the bottom of our folder here. Do we all see Swift package dependencies, okay? Okay, so that's the dependencies. There's ImageKit here, and it does have all the source files. So in offline, you could see what the source files looks like. It's the same source files we've been using. In the sources here, if we look at ImageKit, it's that same extension we've been using, right? If we look at, don't look at data persistence right now because we haven't gotten into this, but if you look at Network Helper and you look at sources, the same app error we've been using, it has that. And the same network helper we've been using, it has that, okay? So everybody should agree at this point that this is an easier way to add in some dependency that you need. Yes? No? Maybe? Unless you just love finding files and dragging files over it. Yes, sir?
So when we put on the dependency, the ImageKit dependency, did that put on network helper and data persistence, or was that already on there?
The ImageKit has network helper and data persistence. ImageKit. Just doing ImageKit has those two.
So you can like link other dependencies?
Yes, exactly. We'll get more into like Swift packages and stuff like that and what the manifest looks like. But for now, just like being able to add it is like what we needed. Yes, sir?
So these actually downloaded to the file, right?
Yes.
It's now a part of the Holiday project?
Yes, exactly. And making sure to commit it and pushing it is very important. That way you're not redoing it all the time. Great. Any other questions? So let's see how that's used, right? We did say it imports it. So if we go to the API client, for example, go to API client. So if you go to API client on line number 10, we all see import network helper, correct? So that's how you get network helper to be used in your particular project. So for example, on line 20, I'm using network helper because I said import network helper. Again, this is a library that I created, right? Very similar to like a foundation, it's a library that Apple created, but as developers, we could create our own libraries. If we catch ourselves reusing some particular class or whatever, we could make a library for it, we could make a Swift package for it. As far as like making our own Swift packages, I'll get into that later in curriculum, not right now. Okay? Great. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So now if we're creating a Git repository for it, I see in the source, what is it, the source control navigator that like the holiday projects is the only one that you can create a remote for.
The holiday project in here.
Yeah.
The only thing you'd be pushing is holiday project. But if I was to commit, like, do we have it's not a repository. So if we were to create a Get repository,
Yeah.
the thing we'll be pushing is our holiday project.
But
What you need to be adding is the package manifest file. That way your project dependencies also gets added. Okay? So what I would do, I would say create Get repository. Everybody go ahead and click on create Get repository. Go to source control, create Get repository. There's no Get history, so that should work. Click on it, everybody. If I click on it, yes? Okay, cool. So that creates a remote. This is your question here?
Yeah, like after we do that, so then we go to create the remote.
Okay, so now we navigate over, right? And we click on holiday projects. We right click on it and we say create remote, like we do. I would click on create remote here. Let me cancel out. So Yulia, you go to the source control navigator. You right click on holiday projects master. And you see create holiday project remote. In other words, you want to push it to GitHub, right? So you click on create remote. For now, I will say in class here. And I could keep it public. And at that point, I would create it, right, Kelby? And it creates it, it pushes it to GitHub.
Yeah, but my question is, so does it, so I see like the data persistence UI, or the image kit and the network helper.
What it will do, it will keep track of what dependencies you have
So those
on
get-
GitHub,
those
exactly.
get sent to GitHub too?
Exactly, exactly. You always want to have them on GitHub. That way, if you share it to somebody else, they don't have to reinstall it. Yes?
So in order to do that, do we have, like, once we push the holiday project, is that automatically those two, or do we have to do those one by one individually?
No, that's it. The holiday project has everything. Okay, cool, great. Any other questions about that? Let me just verify everything got pushed here. Yes, everything got pushed. One other thing you could do, you could verify via terminal, because as I said before, Xcode does only so much with source control. Terminal does more work, okay? So if you feel like something is not getting pushed or you want to verify, please go to terminal, everybody. Okay, so let's go to terminal here. Go to terminal, navigate over to your project. Where am I? I'm in the project. Get status. Yeah, so just do a get status and make sure everything got pushed, right? In your holiday project folder, in your holiday project folder in terminal, just make sure everything got pushed. Just do a simple get status. Okay? Great. Let us continue on. Okay, so next step we have here. We've done Swift packages. Let's go to our scroll view. So in our project, let's navigate over to storyboard. Let us navigate over to storyboard. I'll make my best to slow the pace here. But please focus as best as you can on the lecture here. Okay, so what's the first thing we said we're gonna add? Anybody remember? A scroll view. So we'll add a scroll view, that'll be the first thing we'll add, and our scroll view will take up the whole device. So let's go ahead and do that. Let us search for a scroll view in our library. So scroll view. It takes up the entire scene. My scroll view takes up the entire scene. My constraints will be 0 all around. So now I'm going to set up my constraints. 0 top, 0 leading, 0 trailing, 0 bottom. 4 constraints for the scroll view. So far, right? It's 4 constraints for the scroll view. Great. Don't worry about the red right now. We'll take care of that with the content view, or the next view will be added. So we said first scroll view. Second, we'll add in a UI view on top of that scroll view. The UI view will be the one to have the elements, or the UI elements. So let's go ahead and get a UI view. I search for UI view. It comes up quicker instead of just searching for view. So I'm getting a view here, a UI view, drag onto my scroll view. Again, takes up the entire device here. Okay, let us now open up the document outline. Open up the document outline. Let's go ahead and click on our view, the last view we just added. Click on it, and we'll edit it to say content view. So the last view we added, click on it, edit the name to say content view. So far what we've added a scroll view and we've added a content view. Great. Control drag from the content view over to the scroll view in the document outline. Control drag from the content view over to the scroll view in the document outline. I'm control dragging from content view to scroll view. Okay. The constraints I want, I'll hold down shift. I'll hold down the shift. Yes, sir. We renamed the view to content view. The last view we added, rename it to content view. Okay, so control drag from the content view to the scroll view. The dialog comes up with constraints. At this point, hold down the shift button, and we shift selecting leading, top, trailing, bottom, equal width, equal heights. 6 constraints. 6 constraints. Leading, top, trailing, bottom, equal width, equal heights. Okay? That's it. Great. At this point, we should have no more errors for constraints. Right? Okay, perfect. So let us continue on here.
Can I ask why don't we have errors?
Because the scroll view needs to know what its content view is, and then the content view itself needs to be properly constrained with the scroll view.
Yeah, but for example, when we added scroll view, we had errors, so it had no.
Because the scroll view by itself is not enough. You need to give it a content view.
So content view has all the constraints we need.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And there's one other constraint we need to adjust. We need to adjust the height of it. The height needs to be flexible because we vertically scroll it. So we need to edit that. So let's go ahead and edit that. Please open up your inspectors. Open up your inspectors, go to the size inspector, click on your content view. Click on your content view. Let me zoom in here. Do we all see equal height? Okay, so click on equal height, edit. Do we see edit? Click on edit. Priority. We want to change the priority. We don't want to make it strictly 100% here. That will not make it scrollable. We want to make that priority lower. So we'll set it to the lowest priority. That way it could grow as it wants. So we have the priority here. We'll change priority from required, right? It's not required. We don't want it to be required. We don't want to be strict at that particular dimension. We want it to be able to grow. So we want to go low here. So change priority from 1,000 to 250. At this point, you'll see the hidden lines here, because now the thing is flexible. Great. So at this point, we are done with the scroll view and the content view. Now we could go ahead and add whatever UI elements we want. In that case, we'll start off with the label. So let's go ahead and get a label. So go to our library and search for a label. Let me make this bigger here. I got a label from the library. I got a UI label from the library. And that particular UI label, I will name it first name. That particular UI label, I will name it first name. And let's go ahead and change the font size for it while we're here. So the font, let's zoom in here. So the font we will go for is a UI font style font. Let's make it title 2. Let's see what that looks like. What's about title 1? Okay, title 1 for now, that's fine. So title 1, first name. I also want a last name, so I'll option drag from my first name to get a second label. And I'll name it second. I'll name it last name. Okay, cool. No constraints yet. We haven't set up any constraints yet. Let's go ahead and get a button. Let's get a button from our library, and we'll add a button somewhere to the trailing edge here, somewhere center here. And our button, we have assets in our folder. Let's go ahead and remove the button name. Move the button name, go down to image, and type in GitHub. GitHub. Okay. Type in GitHub, you should get the Octocat. And the size of this particular button, go to the size inspector. Go to the size inspector, and we'll make it 44 by 44. Why 44 by 44? Anybody knows why I chose 44 by 44?
Same size as the last name.
Close. Anybody else? Why 44 points by 44 points? Who's been reading the Human Interface Guideline over the break? Okay. Apple recommends the minimum size of a button be 44 points, right? For my fat fingers, that works. Okay? Minimum, if you're doing a button, should be 44 by 44. Okay? Again, extra curriculum, extra reading there. The more we could read and know concepts like that is good. I'm not saying memorize it, but after a while, it will just stick as far as like knowing the intricacies of stuff like that. Okay, okay, so we have first name, last name, we have a button, great. Let us keep, what? I went to the size inspector. So I clicked on the button, and I went to the size inspector, and I went down here, and I said 44 by 44. Went down to the view area. Okay, cool. So let us set up the constraints for first name, last name, and we'll continue on. So constraints for the first name, I click on it. I go to add new constraints, and we'll make it 50 to the top. We'll make it 8 to lead in, 8 to trail in. Okay? And for the height of it, I will make it, say 30. The height of the label, I'll make it 30. Again, we need a height. Here we need a height. So we give it a height of 30. We say constrain it to the top at 50, the leading at 8, and the trailing at 8. Those are 4 constraints for the label. Great. Next up, I want to get to my second label, my name label. I click on it. I go to add constraints. And I'll make this about 20 from the bottom of my first name. I'll make it 8 from the leading of my scene. Those are 2 constraints for now. And also, let's make the height the same. So height 30. Great. Perfect. Now the AutoCAD, let's go ahead and set that up. I'll drag the AutoCAD somewhere center here. So we'll center align the button with the last name. We'll center align the button with the last name first. So let's go ahead and control drag. Control drag from the button over to my last name. And I'm choosing center vertically. I'm choosing center vertically. Okay. Next constraints, I'll go to add constraints for the button. I'll make it 8 to the trailing, 8 to the trailing, and the width and the height, we said it's 44. So those are 3 constraints. Again, for the button, center vertically with the last name, constraint to the trailing at 8, and the size is 44 by 44. Make sure you have your trailing set to 8 on the button. Give it a trailing 8 constraint for the button. Okay, great, great, great. Doing good. Next up, we have an image. Let's go ahead and get an image. Let's get an image. So image view, drag over image view right below our last name here. Make this a little bigger, drag this over. For the image view, we'll make it about 500 points. The easiest place to go is the size inspector to make the height different. In my size inspector, I changed the height of the image to 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and set the constraints for our image view. So click on the image view, go to add constraints, and we'll make it 8 to the top or the bottom of last name. We'll make it 0 leading, 0 trailing, and 500 points high for constraints. There's one little thing that I actually want to not. Let me zoom in here. So if you have a constraint to the top, I want it to be to the bottom of the image view. Everybody? I want to actually delete. So click on the image view. Click on the image view and go over. Do we see top space here? Delete the top space. And I want the top space to go to last name. So simply delete the top space first. And control drag from the image view over to our last name and choose vertical spacing. Choose vertical spacing. Great. So instead of aligning to the AutoCAD, we constrain to the last name. Everybody? Marjette, question?
But now it will switch it, right?
The what?
When you draw after last name, dot space equals 15.
That's fine. 15 is fine. You could change it if you want, but we're not going super specific with the height constraints here. Okay, so we have first name, last name, AutoCAD is good, image good is good. Let us give the image view a placeholder image. Go to Attribute Inspector and search for, what did we use here? Just a photo is fine, a photo placeholder. So search for photo fill. That's fine here. So we have a photo fill, we are good. Okay, last thing we need to do is add the description. So we have first name, last name, we have the button. Let's go ahead and add a description label. Okay, so go to your object library, search for a label. What's that? let's get our label here. We'll drag our label. For the label, let us change the font of that particular label. What font are we going to use? So let's choose,
What's the name of the background?
I called it, photo.fill is the placeholder image. For now, let us change large title. Large title, so choose large title for the font. It's up to you what font you want. But let's set up the constraints for the description. I will change this to say description. Description. And for description, let's set up the constraints for it.
Wait,
Description?
this is not a label?
Yes, a label. We just changed the font. It's a label.
Change the font, manually.
Yeah.
Size of it,
Not the size. We chose large title. So if you go to the font area here, Tiff, go to the font area, click on that T here, and instead of a system font, we use a large title font. So that's more dynamic, that's more accessible, so the user could change the font size. You're welcome. Okay, so click on description and go to add constraints. The top will be 8 to the image, 8 to lead in, and 8 to trail in. Remember, we are not setting a height for the description. So 3 constraints for the description label. Top, lead in, trail in. And go ahead and add 3 constraints. The top, the bottom of the image, the top description, 8 to the bottom of the image, 8 to lead in, 8 to trail in. Cool? Okay, lastly, we need to go ahead and control drag from description. Control drag from description over to content view. Control drag from the description label over to the content view. We named it content view. That way we're not mistaking views here. And what are we selecting? Bottom space container. Okay? Great. Okay, so at this point, we will connect our outlets to our view controller. So open up your assistant editor. Open up your assistant editor. And let's go ahead and connect our outlets. So first we have our first name. We'll go ahead, add it to first name. We have our last name, connected to our last name. We have our GitHub button. Why did I add GitHub button here? Add it to the GitHub button. We have a project image view. Go ahead and add it to the project image view. And then we have description label. Go ahead and add it to description label. So we've added all our outlets. Keep your assistant editor open. And we have some comments here. Let's actually get some more space here to work with. Because if there's any issue with our scroll view, we need to come back and fix it. So in our update UI, everybody has access to update UI? Yes? There's a comment here, to do. Let's go ahead and just delete that to do. And uncomment. Okay. So let us run it and let's see if we have anything we need to fix. Again, scroll views could be a bit complicated to work with sometimes. So let's go ahead and run the app and see if we have anything we need to fix. I want you to stay on the same screen, sir. Okay, so we have everybody has their projects loaded. Does everybody have their projects loaded? At minimum for now, before we actually go to the detail view. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Anybody can confirm that they do have the table view populated in the projects? Yes. Okay, perfect. So just click on any one of them. It navigates over to that project. Our scroll view works here. If we go down to Andrea here, well, sorry. Let's go down to Cameron here, Babel. Okay, so we have a problem here. Oh, I think I know what we missed. Anybody knows what we missed here? Why is it not growing? Exactly, right? Everybody, please, right? You get to that point, your thing scrolls, but you don't see all the content for the description. We forgot to change the number of lines to 0, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. That's why we kept our assistant open. Open up your project, your assistants. Click on your description label. Click on the description label. Do we all see where it says line numbers? In the attributes inspector. Click on description. Line says 1. We need to change it to 0. Change it to 0. Press enter. And run the app again. And we'll go back to Babel. Babel is a good example here because it's a bit longer. And we can see all the contents of Babel. If anybody has issues with scroll views, I have to help after the lecture, just because it could be one of many things.
No, I mean, I'm not getting the information from the description. It's not printing.
Your scroll view, scroll view, sorry. The comments in Update UI, did you remove them? Yeah, remove the to-do and remove the comments there. Okay, so we have our scroll view working. Great, great, great. That's awesome. So that means we have time to do Safari View Controller. Say that again.
If you would select hate to description.
Select hate.
Hide for description.
Oh, that's going to break it.
It will not also be able to.
No, because we don't want to give it a height because the description could be 20 lines long. Right? Like Cameron's great example here. He has a nice README. Please emulate Cameron. Go to Cameron for feedback here. I will be trolling you guys with READMEs, by the way. Some of them there's no README there. Mr. Ahad. Demo in ARKit, yeah. And I was a bit unsure of which project to grab. So we'll talk about that. Nutrition app, that's good. You have an image there. And we have description of nutrition app. Also see a mini if you want hints there. You don't have to like Google anything. Your fellows are doing it, right? So go to them and say, hey, what is your README? How did you come up with, like, whatever. Just go to them for that. But we do not want to have one-liners. Project 2020, are you here? No. Project 2020 is not here. I want to change that name. Skin Tea, are you here? Yes. Looking good. We'll be able to go to your GitHub to really troll. So let's do that now. Let's go to add Safari services. So at this point, we are done with our storyboard. So I'll cancel, I saw a hand. Yes, sir?
So if we wanted to add another image under that, is that where we would need to start using,
Another image.
like under the description?
I mean, that's fine, you could do it.
But how would we set up, like, constraints for an image that's below the description?
So if the description grows, it's going to push the image down, right? So you set up the bottom image. The height of it will be height constrained to the bottom of the description. The description still doesn't have.
Storyboard, it'll just.
Exactly. What you could do, let me show you guys one thing here. Let me show you one thing. Thanks for bringing that up. Let me show you one thing you could do with storyboard. So you see like how we have our storyboard file. Yes, our scene. You could actually grow it longer. So pay attention here. If you click on the storyboard and you go to size, inspector. Everybody, go to the size inspector. Do we see size inspector for the storyboard? Do we see simulated sizes fixed? We could change that simulated size to freeform. Everybody? Did you change it to freeform? You change it to freeform and you could make the height longer as you want to layout elements. Okay? So you'd put the image view after it and then you could grow it as long as you want. Cool? So that's one thing you could do with your simulator. All right, so great questions. Let's go to our project detail controller. We started at 10:15, right? 10:15-ish? All right, so we have 15 minutes, we're good. So go to your project detail controller. Everybody go to the project detail controller. And what are we after? So we've done the scroll view, great. Now we're gonna be talking about SFSafariViewController. We've seen it being demoed by some fellows today, but we'll see it in lecture, okay? So let's see what that looks like. So first, to use it, very similar to our import UI kit, import image kit here, we need to say import Safari services because SFSafariViewController is not part of Foundation, it is not part of image kit, it is not part of UI kit, it's not part of Foundation, right? So we need to say explicitly import Safari services. Everybody with me? Don't worry about the import statements, that's not even Java, you need to see Java. There's like 10 import statements before you do anything. Or even C++, right? Cameron, maybe? I haven't done C++ in a while. All right, so here we're gonna do import Safari services. Safari services is that framework that you need to use in order to have access to SFSafariViewController. So now we could say SFSafariViewController and it knows what we're talking about. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, somebody did not add an action here. Okay, Amini did not remind me. So our to-do on 54, we need to go back to storyboard and we need to connect this action. So that action will be GitHub button pressed. And it's a sender UI button. Okay, it doesn't have to be sender, but that's just convention. I use it as well here. Sender UI button, and what is happening here? So when the user clicks on that button, we want to take them to the particular GitHub page. Okay, so what do we need to do? Our project isn't optional, so we need to unwrap it. I'll use the same name, Amini. I know you don't like to use the same names. So we unwrapped our project. So now we have a project to work with. Great. What's the next things we need? We need a URL. So let's get a URL. So guard let URL equal to URL string URL. We'll get the URL from the project dot GitHub URL. We want to make sure that the URL is not empty. For some reason, there might be an empty URL there with some of the projects because there's no project, so it's empty. So here we will make sure it's not empty. So we'll say project.github is not empty. If all that is good, then we are happy. We are happy folks. So at this point on line 63, we have a URL that we could work with. SafariViewController needs a URL to work with, which makes sense. If I'm going to Safari, I need some sort of URL. So that's what we just worked there for. We worked, we got the project to not be optional, we unwrapped it. We also got a URL from the project GitHub URL, and we made sure that it's not empty, right? We don't want to go to some empty page. So for now, we could put a simple print statement here to give us some feedback. I will just say, no project URL. Okay. Again, always try to put some sort of feedback in your guard statement. Like this here is not ideal. I want to say something here. Like if I don't have a project there, maybe I just want to crash the app. To say project was not passed successfully. Because if you just have a return statement, you're like, oh my God, the code is running, it's not crashing, what's happening? Then you just have a return. Return is nothing. Return is void. Nobody hears about it. So you need to give yourself some feedback, whether it be an alert controller, in that case, maybe we want to do it here, or some sort of crash, or some sort of print statement, something. But if you ship into an employer, do not put a print statement. Put an alert, put something visual, okay? No print statements to employers. All right, so next up we have URL here. Great. So at this point, let us get an instance of a Safari View Controller. And here we could type in SFSafariViewController. The initializer we'll use is the URL initializer. It expects a URL, so we pass it a URL. And the last step is to present it. Very similar to how we presented an alert controller, very similar to how we present a view controller. Every view controller has a present method. We simply say present Safari View Controller. So this is the last step. So here we say present Safari View Controller, animation true, no completion, build, no errors. Did we connect this? Okay. Xcode is tricking me here. It's playing with my emotions. Okay, so go to Assistant Editor. Go to Assistant Editor, go to our storyboard, option click on our detail view, and let's connect our action. Again, look at that, playing with my emotions. Random. Okay, so let's connect our IB action to our button. Go ahead and connect your IB action to your button. Okay?
I don't know why.
What's happening?
It's not letting, like, my type is the practice because
Did you import Safari service? Okay, 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 okay. Line. Yes. Yes. Every project has a, well, there's probably 4 projects without one, but every project should have like a GitHub URL. If it doesn't have it, then we're not going to go there. If it has it, we'll go over to Safari View Controller. All right, at this point, let's run the app. We still have 10 minutes to spare, but we don't have to take every 10 minutes of it. Great, so I have the project running. Let's make it bigger here. So if I was to go to Babel again, for example, right? And I go to my GitHub button, it takes me to the page. I could see Babel description here. I could also go all the way down. I really wish there was an option to say always show desktop. But if you go all the way down, do we see desktop version? Click on it. At this point, we will see Cameron's GIF here with, right? Yes? Do we all see access to that? I'm sorry? Why do you want to move Babel? Okay. All right. Not like you want to move Babel, right? All right, cool. So we're able to see that. Let's see if it only works for Cameron or other people as well. Click on done. Let's go ARKit demo. What's happening here with ARKit demo? We got ARKit demo. ARKit demo, can I get some more demo on that README?
No.
Okay. So I need some more README content there, Mr. ARKit demo. So that works, right? Art Finder, we have Art Finder. We could see Art Finder stuff here. I could click on GitHub and see Art Finders, right? ARKit demo, if you need help, see Cassandra.
Oh my God.
Right? She's here all day. Currency exchange. This is a bad image. That's my fault there. I'll fix that. If we go to Guitar app is not here, but we need to talk about, you're here, he's not here. We need to talk about his README a little bit. Let's go to GitHub. Right, cool. All right, so we did everything that we were intended to do. Let's review what we did. We spoke about Swift Package Manager. We saw how to add that in, how to add a dependency in. We spoke about scroll views, and we know how complicated it could be if something goes wrong there. And we spoke about Safari View Controller. Okay? So as we get more into Unit 4, we'll talk a bit more about Swift packages. right? But at the end of the day, we developers, we want to be able to write the native code before we just say import some package. Everybody with me? Right? Before you say import package, know what that package is doing, or know what the contents of it is. Everybody with me? Because at the end of the day, you get a code challenge, you need to be able to write URL session by yourself. You're not going to import some network helper. You'll write it out yourself. Everybody with me? All right, cool. So we'll end here. Any other questions before we end lecture? Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you.